You know what spring smells like in most American backyards? Gasoline and churned dirt. Every March, millions of people drag a rototiller out of the garage, fire it up, and spend a Saturday grinding their garden beds into something that looks like a magazine cover. Fluffy, perfect, ready. And it feels productive. It feels like preparation. It feels like you were doing the right thing because your father did it, his father did it, and every gardening guide you have ever read told you this is step one. But here's what nobody told you. That beautiful, fluffy, freshly tilled bed you just created is not a blank slate. It is a weed bomb. You just detonated it yourself. And in 2 weeks, when green shoots are carpeting every inch of that perfect soil, you are going to reach for the hoe and wonder why gardening feels like a punishment you signed up for voluntarily. 300 miles west of Manhattan, in the rolling farmlands of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, there is a community of over 44,000 people who have been growing food on the same plots of land for more than 3 centuries. They have never owned a rototiller, not one. Their soil is darker than yours, their yields are higher than yours, their weed pressure is a fraction of what you deal with every summer. And the reason why is something so simple, so well supported by modern soil science, and so threatening to a multi-billion-dollar industry that it has been systematically ignored, dismissed, and buried for the better part of 100 years. Today, I am going to show you exactly what the Amish do instead of tilling, why it works at a biological level that will change how you think about dirt forever, and why the people who sell you rototillers, herbicides, and bags of replacement soil have a very specific financial reason to make sure you never find out. The modern rototilling habit did not come from farmers, it came from a factory. After World War II, the United States was sitting on an enormous industrial surplus. Chemical plants that had spent years producing compounds for the war effort needed new markets. Engine manufacturers that had been building military equipment needed civilian customers. The solution was agriculture. Synthetic nitrogen, which had been synthesized at scale for explosives, became fertilizer. Mechanized equipment that had been designed for military logistics became farm machinery. The rototiller, which had existed as a niche tool since the early 1900s, was suddenly mass-produced, heavily marketed, and positioned as the foundation of modern gardening. The pitch was simple, and it worked. Turn the soil, kill the weeds, start fresh. Clean, scientific, modern. And every spring you needed to do it again, because the logic of the machine demanded repetition. You could not till once and be done with it. The soil compacted, the weeds returned, and the solution was always the same. Do it again. Buy more bags of amendment to replace the fertility you had just destroyed. Spray more herbicide on the weeds that came back thicker and faster than before. The rototiller industry in the United States alone is worth over $400 million annually. The herbicide market that services home gardeners is worth billions more. These are not industries that profit from a gardener who tills once and stops. They profit from the cycle. And the cycle only continues if you never ask the question that Amish farmers stopped asking 3 centuries ago.
What if the soil is not something you manage by force? What if it is something you build by leaving it alone? To understand what the Amish figured out, you need to understand what a man named Sir Albert Howard saw in India in 1905. Howard was a British botanist sent to Pusa, in what is now the Bihar state of India, to teach modern Western agricultural methods to Indian farmers. He arrived with all the confidence of someone trained at Cambridge and all the certainty of a man who believed that science had solved farming. What he found when he got there stopped him cold. The Indian farmers he was supposed to be teaching were, in many cases, growing healthier crops than anything he had seen in England. Their soil was deeper, their plants showed fewer signs of disease, their pest pressure was lower, and they were doing it without a single synthetic input, without mechanized tillage, and without any of the techniques Howard had been sent to introduce. Howard spent the next 30 years trying to understand why. What he eventually documented and published in his 1940 book, An Agricultural Testament, was a principle that modern soil science has since validated in study after study. The soil is not a medium for growing plants. It is a living ecosystem, and every time you disturb it, you are not preparing it, you are wounding it. The key players in this ecosystem are fungi, specifically a category of fungi called mycorrhizae, from the Greek words for fungus and root. These organisms form physical connections with plant roots, weaving their threads, called hyphae, through the surrounding soil in networks that can extend for meters in every direction from a single plant. Through these networks, plants access water, phosphorus, nitrogen, and dozens of trace minerals that their roots could never physically reach on their own. In exchange, the plant feeds the fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis. This partnership is not optional. It is not a nice bonus. It is the mechanism by which most plants on Earth acquire the nutrition they need to survive. Research published in the journal Nature has confirmed that over 90% of all terrestrial plant species form mycorrhizal relationships. The forest did not evolve soil, the fungi did. Here is what a rototiller does to this system. In a single pass, the spinning blades of a rototiller shred every mycorrhizal thread in the top 6 to 8 inches of soil, a network that a plant spent the entire previous growing season building, a network that represents months of biological investment, is destroyed in 30 seconds. When you plant into that tilled bed, your seedlings have to start building those connections from zero. They are nutritionally isolated for the first weeks of their lives, which is precisely when they are most vulnerable to stress, disease, and pest pressure. Howard saw this in India. He documented it in meticulous detail, and for about 20 years, his work was taken seriously. The Rodale Institute, founded in 1947 in Pennsylvania, built an entire research program around his principles. Universities ran trials, farmers experimented, the evidence accumulated. And then the chemical companies got their marketing budgets in order, the government extension offices got their funding from agricultural industry partnerships, and Howard's findings got filed quietly under the heading of historical interest. The Amish never filed them anywhere. They just kept gardening the way they always had. Here is what is actually happening in the soil beneath an Amish garden, described in the language that took Western science until the 1990s to fully articulate. When you leave soil undisturbed, 3 things build simultaneously. The first is the mycorrhizal network. Every growing season, the fungal threads extend further, form more connections, and create a more efficient nutrient distribution system. Researchers at the University of British Columbia, led by ecologist Suzanne Simard, published landmark work in 1997 demonstrating that these networks are not passive pipes, they are active communication systems. Plants use them to share carbon, water, nitrogen, and even chemical warning signals. A plant under aphid attack can send a chemical signal through the fungal network that causes neighboring plants to begin producing defensive compounds before the aphids arrive. The Amish do not know the word mycorrhizae. They know that their plants get stronger every year they leave the soil alone. The second thing that builds is structure. Healthy, undisturbed soil contains billions of bacteria and fungi that produce sticky proteins, the most important of which is called glomalin. Glomalin acts as a biological glue, binding soil particles into clumps called aggregates. These aggregates create a structure that holds both air and water simultaneously, which sounds like a paradox but is exactly what plant roots need. Air in the pore spaces allows roots to breathe. Water in the smaller pores is available to roots as they grow. Tilled soil destroys aggregates. The particles separate, the structure collapses, and when it rains, the soil seals over like concrete. Water runs off instead of soaking in. The cycle of compaction and retilling begins again. The third thing that builds is the weed suppression mechanism, which is the part that should make every home gardener sit up very straight, because this is where the Amish appear to be doing something almost magical, and the explanation is one of the most satisfying pieces of biology I have ever encountered. Weed seeds are not like plant seeds in a packet. They do not germinate on demand. They are opportunists. They are programmed to wait in the soil, sometimes for years, for a specific set of conditions that signal the right moment to grow. The primary trigger is light. Most weed seeds require a pulse of direct light, even a fraction of a second of exposure to activate germination. This is called the light requirement, and it evolved as a survival strategy. If a weed seed is buried 6 inches underground, it has no business germinating because it will never reach the surface. It waits. When you rototill your garden, you do not kill the weed seeds in your soil, you lift them. A single pass of a rototiller brings thousands of dormant weed seeds from several inches down into the germination zone near the surface. Each one gets its fraction of a second light exposure as the blade flips the soil. Each one activates. That clean, freshly tilled bed that looks so perfect on Saturday afternoon is, at a microscopic level, a weed nursery that you just switched on. Research from the University of California, Davis found that no-till plots had weed emergence rates up to 78% lower than conventionally tilled plots after just 3 seasons without tillage. The seeds are still there in the soil. They will be there for decades, but without the trigger, they stay dormant indefinitely.
The Amish solution is not a herbicide. It is not a weed barrier fabric. It is a thick layer of organic mulch, usually straw, laid down 4 to 6 inches deep across every bed every season. This mulch does 4 things at once. It physically blocks light from reaching the soil surface so dormant seeds never get their trigger. It holds moisture in the soil below, reducing how often you need to water. It insulates the soil, keeping root zones cooler in summer and warmer during cold snaps at either end of the season. And as it decomposes from the bottom upward, it feeds the exact organisms that build the aggregate structure and mycorrhizal networks described above. A 2024 study examining permaculture sites that used no-till with deep organic mulch found soil carbon stocks 27% higher than conventionally tilled control fields, bulk density 20% lower, meaning the soil was looser and more breathable, and earthworm populations 201% higher. Earthworms are not a vanity metric. Each worm tunnel is a channel for air and water to reach roots. A soil dense with earthworms is a soil that drains, breathes, and feeds plants without any intervention from you. This is the system the Amish have been running on the same plots of land for generations, not because they read the University of California Davis study, because they watched what happened when they left the soil alone and they had the discipline not to stop doing it. Here is exactly how to convert your existing garden to this method. This is not complicated. The materials cost almost nothing. The labor is significantly less than what you are currently doing. The hard part is not the work. The hard part is resisting the urge to till in spring when every instinct you've been trained to follow tells you that you should. Step 1. Stop tilling. Right now before you do anything else. If you have already tilled this season, that is fine. This is where you start. But this is the last time. Put the rototiller away and leave it there. Step 2. Assess your soil without disturbing it. Push a garden fork or a broad fork into the soil and lever it gently upward without flipping the layers. You're looking for 2 things. First, compaction. If the tines will not penetrate more than 3 or 4 inches, you have hardpan and you will need to address it before mulching. Second, biology. Pull out a handful of soil and examine it. You want to see earthworm castings, the small dark pellets that look like miniature soil grains. You want to see fine white threads, which are fungal hyphae. If your soil is pale, uniform, and smells like nothing, it is biologically depleted and needs feeding before mulching. Step 3. Feed the soil surface. Spread 1 to 2 inches of finished compost across the entire bed surface. Do not dig it in. Do not till it under. Lay it on top. Rain, earthworms, and fungal threads will move it downward over the following weeks. This is exactly how a forest floor receives nutrients, and it is exactly as effective. If you have access to aged animal manure, a thin layer under the compost adds nitrogen and microbial diversity that will accelerate the biological recovery of your soil. Step 4. Apply your mulch layer. On top of the compost, lay 4 to 6 inches of straw, not hay, straw. Hay contains seeds and will create exactly the weed problem you are trying to solve. Straw is the stalks left after grain harvest, and it contains almost no viable seeds. A standard straw bale costs between $5 and $8 at most farm supply stores and covers roughly 40 square feet at a 4-inch depth. Pull the mulch back slightly around any existing plants so the stems have a few inches of airspace. Crowding stems with mulch promotes rot and fungal disease. Step 5. Plant through the mulch. For transplants, push the mulch aside, cut a small hole through any remaining cardboard layer if you used sheet mulching to establish the bed, and tuck the transplant directly in. The roots will grow down through the mulch layer and into the soil below within days. For direct seeded crops like carrots, beets, or radishes, pull the mulch back from a narrow strip, seed the strip normally, and replace the mulch right up to the edge of the seeded area once the seedlings are 2 inches tall. Step 6. Add 1 inch of fresh mulch each season. The existing mulch will decompose from the bottom up over the course of the growing season. This is correct. This is the process feeding your soil. Each autumn after you clear your summer crops, add 1 fresh inch of straw on top of whatever remains. In spring, your soil will be visibly darker, noticeably softer, and measurably more alive than the year before. What to expect in year 1. You will see some weeds push through, particularly in the first season if your soil has a heavy weed seed bank from years of tillage. Pull them. Do not till to address them. Add a 2nd inch of mulch over the area where weeds appeared. By midsummer of year 1, weed pressure will already be noticeably reduced from what you experienced in previous seasons. What to expect in year 2. Most gardeners who make this switch report weeding time dropping by more than half. The soil begins to feel different under your hands. Springy, loose, alive. Moisture lasts significantly longer between rain events. What to expect in year 3? This is when it becomes undeniable. The soil you are gardening in will be genuinely different from the soil you started with. It will hold its structure. It will drain well and retain moisture simultaneously. Earthworm populations will be visibly higher. Your plants will be darker green, thicker stemmed, and more resistant to both pest pressure and disease. You will look at the rototiller in your garage and feel something between confusion and mild embarrassment at how long you used it. The Amish do not use a rototiller because they understand something that took Western soil science until the late 20th century to formally describe. The soil is not a tool, it is a community. It is billions of organisms living in relationship with each other and with the roots of your plants, building connections that make the whole system more productive, more resilient, and more alive with every year that passes undisturbed. Every time you till, you reset that community to zero. You start over. The industry that sold you the machine benefits from that reset because reset soil needs amendment, needs herbicide, needs intervention. Soil that is left to build needs none of those things. It takes care of itself, and it takes care of your plants in ways that no product on any shelf can replicate. The Amish have been farming the same land for over 300 years without resetting it. Some of those garden plots have been producing food continuously, season after season, since before the United States existed as a country. The soil in those beds is not depleted, it is extraordinary. It got there not through investment or technology or chemistry. It got there because someone decided 3 centuries ago to leave it alone and trust what was already living in it. You do not need 300 years. You need one decision, made this spring, to put the rototiller away and let the biology begin. The soil beneath your feet has been waiting for exactly this. All it needs is for you to stop disturbing it. If this changed how you think about what is happening under your garden, hit subscribe. Everything I am covering goes deeper every single week. I will see you in the next one.